people get caught up in these thinking traps and, catastrophizing whatever situation they're in and not seeing a way out, not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
So Standing in the Gap is about giving back. It's about showing up for people who have no one else to show up for them. I am Dr. Tanja Williams, president of St. Petersburg College, and you are listening to Standing in the Gap. Welcome to Standing in the Gap. Today, we're going to talk about mental health and making sure that we are healthy in all areas. And today we have an expert, Ms. Zaneta Ellison. Zaneta is a distinguished licensed mental health counselor, certified life coach, author, and public speaker, dedicated to transforming lives through her expertise and compassionate care. As the founder and CEO of New Vision Behavioral Health Incorporated, Zaneta has established a reputable, privately owned group practice with multiple locations in Tampa Bay, Florida, and Houston, Texas. Zaneta, welcome to Standing in the Gap.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you and I know each other because we kind of grew up together, so I'm going to be as fun as possible here.
Okay.
All right. So tell us about your journey and how did you get into mental health awareness?
Sure. So I received my bachelor's in psychology from Florida A&M University. My goal was to go and get my master's in social work. I realized that I had a passion for people, but understanding human behavior and just the social side of mental health. And then my plans changed. I ended up having my daughter and then changing my plans to getting my master's in mental health counseling. There I knew that therapy was where my professional skills and my interpersonal skills would be the most highlighted. And so I went into being a therapist, got licensed, and the rest is history.
Wow, what an amazing story. You know, I remember when you worked at the VA and you were talking about, this just isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I said, Zaneta, it's a great job. Stick with it, move forward. But you followed your gut and you decided, no, this is what is best for me. This is where I want to be. How did you decide to make that big jump? What pushed you into that? Was it that mental health was that important to you in your life, or you felt you had a calling, or what was the it factor for you to leave that secure role and make that move?
I think there were a few things. In my role, I still was working with individuals who had mental illness. It was just in the capacity of doing vocational rehab.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I was constantly reminded how unimportant my master's degree was, my license was. And so I felt stifled. I felt stifled because they reminded me I wasn't there to be a therapist. I was there to help them get a job. But I knew that the main issue that a lot of the veterans that I work with struggle with was mental health and addiction. And to not see that and to not address that was doing a disservice to them. And so I had already had my business on the side, and I just felt this desire to leap. And it was scary, and I fought it for a while. You know, I came to you.
You did, you did.
You weren't a naysayer. You was just protective of me, right? You knew me and my family. You know, I was a single mom, and so you knew the risk involved with being a full-time entrepreneur. And there was a calling that I had, and I couldn't run from it anymore.
You know, I remember my advice was, Zaneta, I believe you should do this, but keep that job while you're building that. And I think your passion just really pushed past that and said, this is my purpose.
Yeah.
This is what I want to be. So mental health is just like mega important and has been so overlooked for decades in America, where we were embarrassed to say, hey, I need to sit down and I need to work on me. I really do. And I'm having some mental and emotional issues. How did you get started with your company, and what were the challenges? I mean, when you think about this, this is an area that we really did not look upon. We didn't look at it as something to be proud of. You know, people weren't at the beginning talking about, girl, I'm going to see, you know, my mental health counselor. I'm going to see my, you know, therapist. Now it's like, I'm going to see my therapist.
Right.
So what was the challenge to getting your company started?
Challenges. I would say infrastructure. Infrastructure was something I lacked. My master's degree taught me how to be a good therapist, but they didn't teach me how to be an entrepreneur. And so we weren't taught the business side of things. So all I knew was I wanted to do counseling full time, but I didn't know everything involved with that. And so it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of money. I mean, to pursue my passion, I liquidated almost all of my assets in order to fund my business because I didn't qualify for any lending or anything. Like I was told, I'll give you money to open a Subway, but not to open a counseling practice. Yeah, and so I had to fund it with every resource that I had.
Well, it takes courage to do that, to liquidate your assets because you have this passion for helping people with mental health. So with that passion, what was the it? I mean, is it because you get a satisfaction from seeing a person really go from not being able to function to being able to function? What is that like?
Yeah, I mean, back then when you think about when I went into business probably about, 13 years ago. And so when you look at mental health 13 years ago, it was more the stigmatized, people who were delusional or psychiatric, right? More connected to illness. People who were ill, not necessarily people who just needed help with life transitions, people who needed help with navigating, changes in their life or noticed they were a little bit more sadder than usual. And so I realized that, man, quote unquote, crazy people aren't the only ones who need support, because that was the stigma that was out there. Only crazy people go to therapy. And then I realized, no, everyday people who are just, living and breathing in this world need some support sometimes from a professional. And so I think realizing that more and more people needed that level of care and support, and that the fact they had the courage to come out and say, I need help, somebody needed to be there to support them. I also think maybe it was my own subconsciously me trying to heal myself because I never valued my own mental health. I became so focused on helping everybody else get well and seeing the changes in their life and feeling validated by other people's healing, but I didn't really focus on my own. And so working with other people who almost were mirrors to everything I was dealing with at the time redirected the healing towards me, which almost just gave me this passion and fire to keep doing what I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
At the college, we serve 38,000 individuals, and we have counseling opportunities for every student. They get 3 to 5 sessions of free mental health counseling, because in higher ed, this has become more and more important to make sure people are balanced, but that they're really comfortable in the skin they're in, and that they feel good enough to say, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening in mental health is things are now opening up for you to say, I'm not okay. How do we get more people to acknowledge they're just not okay? Especially leaders, because many times we think we don't need help. We got money, we have education, we don't need help. Well, I can tell you those out there online, you need help. We all do, from time to time. And so how do we get people more comfortable to say, I need help, I'm not okay?
Well, the good thing about, one of the good things that came out of COVID, if I could say that, right, was that there was an awareness that people needed help, right? We could no longer distract ourselves from things. We no longer could run from ourselves with work and any of the busyness of life. And so we had to sit with ourselves and realize, like, I don't like it here, I don't even like me, And so I think the calls I were getting, people were just becoming more self-aware that something was off. And so what I was getting ready to say was COVID it allowed the stigma of mental health to come off, and mental health became like a thing, right? And so now it's almost like faddish to be like, oh, I have a therapist, like you ain't it if you don't have a therapist.
You gotta have one,
Yeah.
Well, I think the other piece is you didn't stop just with your company. You've also had a lot of events in the community for youth, because mental health, the challenge itself is now going down into elementary and middle and high school. It's not just adults.
Right.
And when you think about children and mental health, what are some of the causes that you're seeing that will cause a child to say, I need help, I don't feel right, or I'm not okay?
Yeah. I mean, mental health can start in vitro. You know, if a woman is pregnant and she's dealing with her own mental health, those hormones are passed down in vitro. So there's such a thing as infant mental health, you know, and so, you know, that's a baby that's constantly crying, unconsolable. And so a lot of infants are experiencing that. So you can see it from the womb all the way. If it never gets treated, it just grows with them. Of course, trauma, you know, when people or children experience any type of distressful event, it could create mental health, whether short-term or long-term. So there are many roads that kind of lead to someone experiencing a mental illness or a mental health experience.
If you were a student in high school, how do you reach out for that help? I mean, what are you teaching your clients, for children especially? What do they say? What do they do?
Yeah. I mean, how they reach out nowadays, they will tell a friend, they will tell a teacher. One thing about the kids we see now, they are not afraid to throw out their mental health, you know, sometimes more than what they should, but they'll say, like, you know, I've been having thoughts of killing myself, and they'll say it very matter-of-factly. They will talk about feeling sad and things like that. So yeah, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot more youth who have mental illness or experiencing mental health crisis more and more.
And for our parents out there, how do you help them realize that my child is in crisis?
Yeah.
And like, how do we, you know, I'm thinking of our college students, many are parents, a large majority are parents. And how would they know that their child may be in a crisis?
Yeah, watch them. I mean, if you notice that they are maybe pulling away a lot more than usual, isolating, acting out. Children mostly act out. And so grades may be slipping, maybe more defiant than usual, just having some high-risk behaviors. That's usually a sign that something is going on.
So when you talk about trauma, especially with COVID, COVID brought out a different beast for people, because you mentioned it earlier, you couldn't hide. I mean, we were all in that small space, and all of a sudden we started seeing and realizing things were different than what we thought when we were out all the time, when we weren't, you know, in the home. And so when you talk about post-traumatic stress and growth, like things that are really, really bad, parents are yelling, they're frustrated, the money's not right, the housing is in jeopardy, the children are home all day. I think parents did get a good understanding of their children. They might have loved the teachers a little bit more when they,
I did.
You did?
I did.
When they came back. But how does what you offer help them overcome this adversity and these problems?
Sure. So we're all about teaching children how to be self-aware, building that emotional intelligence. That means you're aware of self, you're aware of others, you're aware of the world around you. So you know your triggers, right? Teaching them how to know when they're not okay. Teaching them how to advocate for themselves and others. And so we're all about building skills. I tell them, you may not need it now, but keep waking up in the morning. You're going to use these skills. I wish you had them, or be glad that you had them. So giving them the tools and strategies to manage their own mental, emotional health that maybe we didn't get, you know? So having those conversations. A lot of our work, we go out into the community. Although we are a group practice, so we have the traditional people come to the office and be seen privately, we believe in giving these strategies and these tools to the community. So we partner with organizations who have the youth, right? So that's the capture audience. And we will make mental health relevant in any setting. I don't care, from the arts to technology or whatever. Wherever there's people, there's mental health, right?
Mental health.
Right. And so we partner. We have a an annual mental health youth empowerment summit.
Right.
Every year.
Right.
Yep, it's been here. It's been on several of your campuses.
Yes, yes.
And that is just a day of empowerment where we reach out to families and youth and we just give them tools and strategies. We have all sorts of professionals there, everywhere from medical professionals to teachers, teaching them how to get 504s, just to be advocate for their child who may be suffering from mental or emotional disorder.
So can you tell us more about what the tools and strategies are that you're teaching the youth at this summer program?
Yeah, one of the things we like to do is we're all about self-awareness again. So having them be aware of, again, their triggers, the things that they notice about them, good, bad, or indifferent, valuing connection. So when I'm not okay, who is somebody I feel safe to talk to, right? Teaching them how to be responsible and more what we call a self-directed healer, meaning I know how to get me in shape. When my emotions are all over the place, I know things that I can do to regulate myself. So learning how to do emotional regulation, grounding, I don't care if it's breath work, to meditation, to prayer, whatever grounds you, right? And also helping them with what we call distorted thinking, those thinking traps. You know, everybody hates me, I hate school, I hate life. Those things that get us in emotional entanglements. So teaching them how to just be more in control of their thoughts and their emotions.
You know, it's interesting because when I think about St. Petersburg College and the 3 collegiate high schools we have, dual enrollment, all of those students who are here, who are high school age children, they would benefit from some of those, you know, skills that you just mentioned. So I'll be calling you.
Shameless
you
plug,
know,
absolutely.
Definitely a shameless plug, but I will be calling you to help us with that. So with the youth piece, I see that as a big part of standing in the gap, because this is something that you do not charge to do. You do it because it's the right thing to do and it's needed. And the number of suicides among our youth, at least attempts as well, continues to skyrocket. And the age, from what I'm learning, is younger and younger. And the stress of being a child is way different than when we grew up.
Right.
And so what are you seeing with that, especially with age, but also with the change of the family dynamics, you know, and how we communicate with our children? I've heard parents curse out their kids. I mean, that can be stressful. That could be a trigger.
Yeah, right.
You know, so when you think about standing in the gap, what made you do that? Why the youth? What?
I mean, to go back to the first part of your question, I mean, the risk factors we're seeing now aren't too much different from the past. Parents been cursing out their kids, you know. You know, we've had those dynamics, unfortunately. Now we have social media, which is new, you know, which is a new risk factor that, you know, children of age now are having to deal with, and it's so impactful to their mental, emotional health for sure. And so we have that. I also worked on a college campus, and you know, Dr. Williams, one of the biggest issues that a lot of those college students were coming to therapy for was they couldn't transition. They struggle with transition. And so that's what made me co-author the book of navigating life transitions from high school to college.
Gotcha.
Because although they academically were excelling, emotionally and mentally, no, they weren't ready. They weren't ready to leave home. They didn't know what that would look like. Those who were from certain cultures who were always told what to do, when it was time to think independently, they didn't know how to do it. No. And so giving them those transitional skills of how to navigate when life transitions from one thing to another, it's a good thing. But you have to be ready. You have to have the appropriate mindset.
And I do think you're right that for college, we're thinking adult learners, they're prepared, that they have what they need to take that leap, to learn how to be that independent thinker. And it sounds to me like there's some more work. It may be a divide between K-12 prep and receipt from the college's side. And we might need to take a look at how can we improve the social skills and the ability to make decisions on your own, because you won't be told to do your homework, you won't be called, you won't receive a text. I mean, you won't get those reminders in college. In college, here's a syllabus.
That's right.
Sink or swim, right?
Right.
And so I think that you're bringing some good points to that. I would like for us to park for a few minutes and just talk about all the things that's being done now in mental health, mental awareness, also giving permission to actually say I'm not okay and not have it as a stigma is there. But there's still some things that are still under the radar that's still skyrocketing, even drug addiction and some other things. What are some of those things that you feel we're really rocking it over here, but in this area, there's still some room for growth or more attention?
I mean, I think suicide prevention will always be an area of focus. And it's a gray area, you know, because people are always trying to figure out, well, why would they do that? You know, we can't ask them because they're no longer here.
Right.
And we look at all the resources around them, you know, why didn't they ask for help or whatever? And one of the things we do know is when a person commits suicide, for whatever reason, they're at peace with their decision. People who really do it, a lot of them don't even tell anybody. Some people can say, oh, I could see the sign, or I saw the signs, but a lot of times they're at peace with their decision. And really it's just, I want to get out of feeling the pain I'm feeling. And I think not being here is my only resort. Not really having good coping skills to deal with the stresses of life. Like, life is stressful. It ebbs and it flows. And some people aren't equipped to handle the ebbs and flows of life, especially our young people. We are seeing less and less resilient young people.
Yeah.
You know, and so their options are almost becoming, you know, I'll just take my life. And so trying to build that resilience in young people is so important. But people get caught up in these thinking traps and, you know, catastrophizing whatever situation they're in and not seeing a way out, not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It happens. And so drug addiction, you know, we have abuse of opioids and prescription pills now, and everything's being laced. There's so much out there.
It is.
Yeah, but people are either, young people are either experimenting or people are just looking for a way out, looking for a way to cope.
You know, I'd like to go back to your comment about resilience and the lack thereof. People really being strong enough to go from one complication to another complication. And kind of talk about post-traumatic stress, which a lot of people think it's solely military. It's not.
Right.
There are individuals who have gone through a lot and don't realize that it has impacted them. I mean, we have college students and you hear some of their stories. It's just amazing that they're still here.
Right.
And that they were able to crawl across the threshold to school to get there. Talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder and mental health and how we can help the community really comb through some of what people have been through that they never thought would even impact them.
Yeah, so post-traumatic stress disorder is a disorder that is characterized by experiencing any distressing or significant event, life event. And for some people, it could be anything from an abuse or rape of some sort, or it could be a serious car accident. So we have what we call the big T's and the little T's, big traumas and the little traumas. For some people, divorce. You know, I know people who are stuck because their parents divorced 33 years ago and they never were able to get out of that distressing event. And then for some people, it could be something as major as abuse. And so when we experience any type of distressing event, it does require resilience.
Yeah.
It does. It does require for us to have empathy and regard for ourselves, because sometimes we re-injure ourselves, you know, when we're hurt with guilt and shame. And so people who live under that, normally they live in that distress a lot longer than the event. And so what we try and do is we try and teach post-traumatic growth. That's that, you know, I went through this experience, but this is what I learned from it. This is the beautiful thing that came out of it. So finding the beauty in the pain. I always say pain will either drive you in two places: it'll drive you crazy or it'll drive you towards your purpose. But it always allows you to steer. It lets you choose. And so when we are able to decide, okay, I'm going to take this situation that I had no control over, I didn't see coming, didn't even deserve, but I'm going to let it minister to me, and I'm going to allow it to teach me something about life, so that way I can be resilient.
Wow, you know, I think about, we always go to the doctor and we get a checkup. You see blood pressure, your weight, cholesterol. Why don't we go to the doctor and have a mental checkup
Yeah.
where there's a way for them to say, you know, this is what you're going through. You need this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then, okay, let me go get my 3 sessions. Let me go get this. When do we get to that point? Because right now, for mental health, it's not like a, you know, regular checkup that, you know, we're going to check to see how you're thinking, what you're going through. You know, are you sad? I've never had a physician say, are you sad today, Dr. Williams? Are you? But I've had a physician say, okay, you've gained weight. I see that. You've done it. So if we want mental health to be so important, to me, it should be a part of my medical plan.
Absolutely.
For a checkup.
So now more and more doctors, that's a great point. More and more doctors are becoming more in tune with the mental health of their clients or their patients, and are noticing, you know, if they come in looking disheveled, or, you know, if they are tearful, or they're paying more attention to them. Some of them have assessments like a PHQ-9. But part of my business model is to have integrated mental health. So we've integrated ourselves in 2 medical practices, one in Tampa, Dr. Tracy's house, and then in Houston, Texas, we're integrated in Thrive Family Medical Center.
Wow.
So, you know, integrating mental health and physical health, because they're all interconnected, right? So physical symptoms can be traced back to mental health and vice versa. And so if you have a doctor that is in tune with mental health and see how they're all intertwined, then you got a good doctor. Unfortunately, it's not a lot of them out there who are doing that because they're so busy. But I feel like more and more physicians are becoming more and more aware of the importance of that.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. And I think the audience would probably want to know a little bit about, can you give us from your expertise, what are some signs that I may not be okay? Like, how do I know that, okay, you having sounds like an episode, or, you know, you're off kilter? What would be some of the things as an adult that I would say to my students, these are things you need to be looking for, that if this is happening, you probably should sit down with someone? What are some of those symptoms?
A lack of interest, like you notice you're just not really interested in things you used to be. Yeah, you feel kind of just what we call languish, just like I'm not really depressed, but I'm not happy. I'm not happy either. I just feel disconnected. So that feeling of just feeling disconnected, or you notice you are sad. You know, I'm crying for no reason, or I'm crying for a lot of reasons. I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. I think I had a panic attack. I think that's what it was. So you're noticing things like that. Your thoughts, you notice there are more gloom and doom thoughts. You're struggling trying to find hope or inspiration. Maybe you're drinking a little bit more. You know, I used to come home from work and just take 1 glass, and now I'm noticing I have 4 as my nightcap, something like that. Or you're smoking more, or or you're eating more. We minimize that. So when you're finding yourself looking for peace outside of yourself, that may be a sign that there's some need for some mental health support. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're ill. It just means you may be experiencing just a life stressor that could be, you know, just kind of draining you mentally and emotionally.
Wow. I know that our students would benefit from those kinds of solutions to actually look at what's happening and how to move things forward, so that they don't ignore it.
That's right.
I think they would also benefit with what you shared about their children, and what to look for and how to move forward with that. Well, I do have a question. We know that you're standing in the gap, and you're giving your time and your talent to the community, especially focusing on our youth, which is very, very important. Can you tell us what was the biggest lesson you've learned in standing in the gap for our youth? What was something that you've learned from that experience?
The biggest lesson?
Yeah. What'd you learn from our youth?
Oh, so many things. How complex they are. They don't listen. Just kidding. You know, I learned that they are so smart. Like they are just so, they're intuitive, right? They're very intuitive.
Okay.
And they have creative ways of expressing themselves. And that when you don't think they're listening, they really are. Yeah. When you don't think they're paying attention, they really are. Yeah. And so there are times to where, you know, I used to get frustrated because I wasn't seeing change happen right away or at all. And I said, Zaneta, you're just a seesawer. Like your job isn't to change or like, no, you don't have that much power. Don't give yourself that much credit. You know, you're just a seesaw. And so maybe they may still be off the chain and doing whatever crazy they want to do, but I know they hear me. And so
wonderful.
Just knowing that my job is just to sow seeds. The therapists I have great therapists that work with me, great therapists, and they just sow seeds. They inspire them. So they give them hope. You know, we can't change your family dynamics. We could try. We can't change some of the stresses you have in your life, but we can give you hope.
You know, and that's really key because in your world, we know we can't change what happened to someone.
Right.
It happened. But we can help them understand, here's how you could cope with that.
Yeah.
Here's how you can look at that. Here's how you can overcome that. You know, so many times as college students, I think our students feed things into their mind about, man, you should have started school 10 years ago instead of saying, yeah, but I'm here today. I made it today. I might be 10 years late, but I'm here today. And so many times that little voice in our head that is often crowded out is that voice of hope.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, you might be a little late to the table, but you made it to the table.
Right.
You know, okay, you might have started behind the start line, but you made it to the finish line.
Yeah.
And being able to give those positive feedback to ourselves.
Yes.
And as college president, I do that every day.
Yeah.
Every day, because we all have come from different places and different spaces. We all have had different experiences, but we don't have to be what happened to us, and we don't have to let it define us. And I think that's what's so critical is sometimes we take what happened to us and we make it a crutch.
Yeah.
And we use it for decades. Like, you know what happened in 1963? That time when the lights were turned on? No.
Yeah.
I don't know that because I don't live back there. I live going forward.
Yeah.
And so I think as you're standing in the gap and you're giving hope, you're also helping them build a future.
Yeah.
And because without hope,
Yeah. What do
right?
we have?
What you got?
Right.
You know, if you don't have that hope.
Right.
And so I think that on that, we're going to end with hope. Hope sometimes are things we haven't seen yet, but it's coming. Hasn't happened today, but it's coming. Maybe you didn't do it well yesterday, but you can. And I just want to thank Ms. Ellison for standing in the gap for our youth in our community on mental health awareness and appreciation without fear, to unapologetically be Z, to make that happen and go out there and brave the world, to quit her job, a secure job, to build her own business and become CEO. That's the way we do it. This is Tandra Williams. Thank you for standing in the gap.